kick it, Dano.
All right. We are back in a special Friday night edition of the Safety and Sportswriter with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe, getting ready to talk about the NFL as we get ready. But we started the week 10 in the NFL last night with a surprising result as Miami upset the Baltimore Ravens. We have some late breaking news that Nate is going to share with you in a second. Plus, we got to talk OBJ, Cam, and a lot of the things that have gone on this week. It's been a very eventful week. Hit it, Nate. What's our breaking news?
Yeah, we got a little breaking news that just hit right before we took the air tonight, and that would be people may have thought that John Gruden was going away, and apparently not so fast. His lawyer came out and announced this afternoon that he will be filing a lawsuit against Roger Goodell and against the NFL. To be honest, I'm not so sure that I blame him. There's 650,000 emails that were taken apart, were investigated, were looked at by all these investigators, as we call them. And, the only emails that were leaked to the public and that were sent over to the Wall Street Journal and to the New York Times were the ones that John Gruden wrote 10 years ago. So, I don't understand really why he was singled out. And I don't think he understands it. And I think, whether you agree with what he wrote or not, obviously, I don't think many people do, because our society is hopefully changed for the better. Gotten through some growth over the past few years, and hopefully people don't really talk like that anymore. But let's be honest, he sent those emails 10 years ago, and anybody in the world at some point may have sent some text or some email that could be looked at as offensive by someone else. And I'm not saying that I agree with anything he said or says, because I don't, but I'm just saying that it struck me as very strange that it was only his emails that came out, and only he's the only person in 650,000 emails that said something that could be construed as offensive. I don't believe that for a second, and I don't think John Gruden believes it. And I think this is a lawsuit that he could potentially win.
I totally agree with you. I mean, anybody, I hate when people sit there and go, I don't have a racist bone in my body. I don't have this. Everybody does. Everybody's told an off-color joke. Everybody laughed at Don Rickles. Everybody's done, like you said, the times have changed, and we've changed with it. Did he make a mistake with those emails? Of course he did. Of course, it was a terrible what he said. But as you said, and you're in the law profession in your other life too, and you know that those would never hold up in court. They weren't looking for him in the investigation, and he's the only one right now who's taking. I mean, where's Daniel Snyder in this? Who was the emails with? What was the conversation about? We need to know the context of what was said and what it was all about. I don't think he just sat there and sent a Twitter meme across to the Redskins and said these, egregious things. I think we need to know everything. If you're going to tell me what he said, I want to know who he was talking to. What was he talking about? What was going on at the time of it? I mean, because there's more to this story than we're getting. And if you're gonna come out, for me as a reporter, I would look at it as an incomplete story. What was the rest of the email? What was it about? Why are you giving me John Gruden? What else? Who are you hiding from? Who are you protecting here? We all know that the Redskins, or I shouldn't say the Redskins, the Washington football team. I mean, here's a team who fought having the Redskins name taken off their logo for how many years? Saying, even when there was the American Indians across the country were saying we're insulted by it. Daniel Snyder said he'd never take this off, but they come out and make Gruden into the racist. That just makes no sense to me at all.
Well, the thing that really confuses me, and obviously we want to talk football on this show because that's what we talk about, but I'm just so confused how this investigation into a abusive culture with the Washington football team turned into a John Gruden witch hunt. He didn't work for the NFL. He
or
didn't
the Reds,
work,
or the Washington football
or the
team.
Washington football team. He didn't work for Daniel Snyder. He was working for ESPN at the time of this. He just happened to be a friend of Bruce Allen, the general manager, who was also the general manager for Tampa Bay when John Gruden was the coach there. So that's why he was emailing this guy, and that's why there were emails from John Gruden mixed in with the emails from the staffers. But the whole point of the investigation was to investigate the staff and the people in charge of the Washington football team. So why are none of their emails public record? Why are none of their emails being ostracized by the New York Times? I completely understand where this lawsuit is coming from, and honestly, I think I kind of agree with the filing of it, considering one man's life is ruined and everybody else gets to go home. It's very confusing to me.
Yeah, and it's the other thing about it is the integrity of these investigations. That we look at the Deshaun Watson investigation, but that's now coming up on a year, and we have no interest in that the NFL is supposedly conducting. But this is the only investigation that they're able to get to the quote unquote bottom of, and they didn't even get the guy they're aiming for. So you talk about a sniper with a bad aim. That's Roger Goodell.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand it at all. Somebody hates John Gruden, and somebody took these emails that he wrote and was like, man, we can get this guy, and then they just forwarded them to a reporter with the New York Times, and the rest is history. And yeah, I mean, should he have said those things? No. But it's not like he thought in any way that was going to be published in the front of the New York Times paper someday. So should you say those things anyway? No, you shouldn't talk like that. You shouldn't think like that. And hopefully we're better than that now as a group. But that still just is very confusing to me.
Well, my final thoughts on it is, first of all, it brings into one of the hardest things that we have as a country right now is privacy issues. We walk around with cameras and recording devices. Everybody in the country walks around with a camera, a recording device on their hip, wherever they're going. So privacy does not exist in this country anymore. And the other thing is, like, where is if you said something, like I said, if you told an off-color joke back in 1995 or said something to somebody back, they can use it against you today. You might totally think a different way now than you did, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. You may have grown, but you're going to be guilty no matter what. I mean, that's just it's totally against what fairness is supposed to be about.
Well, and this is what we talked about when this all happened. And this is what we said on our show right after this story initially broke was, is this how it's going to go? Are we going to start going back and pulling apart servers and looking for people's emails that they sent 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago and dissecting them? Because we can ruin a lot of people's lives, I'm sure, if that's what we're doing now, because this sets a really bad precedent that we can just go and find some message that someone sent to somebody at some point and then make it look however we want to ruin somebody. I just don't I don't get that thought process, and that's a real slippery slope, because essentially we can ruin anyone we want to at any time.
It is, and because now that the precedent has been set, this has to go down the line for everybody. Sports reporters, owners, it's no matter what, it's going to be, if it's found out, the precedent is set now. We can go back into your past and find something about you and use it against you. So that's scary. It really is scary. You talk about Big Brother watching. Well, Big Brother is here, 1984. They warned us about it in that stupid book we had to read in high school.
Yeah, and you know what? I stand by myself. I can look in the mirror every day. I really can, because, you know, I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with
Me
this
too.
guy. I may not be the most handsome dude on earth, but I'm comfortable with this guy. But I did used to, every once in a while, have a adult beverage or two, and I may have said something really stupid at some point that you know, when it wasn't me really talking, and if we can just, you know, go off of that to end somebody, it's not a good look. But
I've told off-color jokes. I've did things, or said, things like that. I'll admit to it. Don't do it anymore. And I always say, people sit there, like I said, I hate to say that when people stand up and say, I don't have a racist bone. Yes, you do have racist bone in your bodies. Everybody's afraid of people that are different than them until they get to know them. You look at people differently, and then you get to know them, and you realize they're human beings just like you. I mean, it's just, it's a normal function of growing in this world. And hopefully it happens early in life to most people. Sometimes it happens late to some people. But, you learn to get to know people and get to accept them, and everything's fine. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, for you sit there and you go, oh, I don't, you do. You have to learn to accept people, whether it be religion, whether it be race, whether it be anybody that's different than you. If it's outside your comfort zone, it takes a while for you to figure out that there's nothing to be afraid of. So that's just my feeling on it.
Oh, no, I'm with you. And, I think we broke it down pretty good there, but that's a big story, and it's going to be very interesting to figure out what's happening with it and to see where it goes from there. But our primary focus is sports, so I would like to, first and foremost, I think we have to touch on this Panthers situation.
Okay.
I think we have to talk about that first. I want to know. I need to know. I think we need to go back, and if we want to start pulling servers apart, we need to pull apart the Carolina Panther front office computer servers, because I want to know who sent the email that said, first off, Sam Darnold looks great. This guy is just he's misunderstood in New York, and we need to pay that guy to come down here and be our quarterback, because not only did they trade away NFL assets, whatever they may have been. I mean, we can break down exactly what they gave up, but they traded assets to get this guy, bring him into their team, thwarted him as their starter, picked up his fifth-year option, which no one's really talking about, but he's guaranteed over $18 million for next year. And now they've already decided he's garbage and pulled him and signed Cam Newton. So, somebody needs to be held accountable for this, don't you think?
Yeah, and I fear that it's going to be Matt Rule in the long run. And I like Matt Rule, but I mean, here's a guy who didn't do his homework on. Yeah, I agree with you. You and I both are on the same page when it comes to Sam Darnold. I mean, I remember watching the Jeff George happenings when that was going on, when every coach in America thought that they could straighten out Jeff George. But Jeff George had one thing that Sam Darnold doesn't have. Jeff George had a right arm that you seldom see in the NFL. I mean, that guy could flat out throw the ball on a dime, 30 yards. He had a 10-cent head, but he had $1 million arm. So I can understand why coaches would look and go, if I could rein him in, I got a guy who could do things Elway can do. Only Elway could throw the ball like that at the time he was playing, or Marino. So I understood that.
Well, and Sam Darnold has his own team.
Sam Darnold has none of that. Sam Darnold does not have anything. He doesn't do anything particularly well that you sit there and you go, if I can only correct that, if I only get him to stop doing that, it would make him great. Even if you get him to stop turning the ball over, he's not a great passer to football. And he runs well enough to get you 3, 4, 5 yards maybe, but he doesn't have like Josh Allen ability to go downfield and make a 30-yard run, or a Lamar Jackson take it to the house run. There's nothing he does out there that, I mean, I would even say, if you look at it, and not just because I'm a Giant fan, Daniel Jones has more going for him than Sam Darnold ever had. And Daniel Jones right now is a middle of the pack to lower pack quarterback. So I agree with you. I don't see what they saw in him.
Why would they leverage their franchise on this guy? I mean, they already had Teddy Bridgewater,
right?
Who's been proven to be a guy that can win when healthy in this league. Although he's had trouble staying healthy, when he's healthy, he's proved he can be a winning quarterback in this league. And they shipped him out of town like he was, an Omaha steak box, and replaced him with Sam Darnold. Yeah. And it just blows my mind. And there have been some instances, like if you go back and watch the tape of the Carolina-Minnesota game, there was a couple drives where you're like, whoa, Sam looked good right there, because he plays football for a living. So obviously there's going to be some times, but when you look at a complete body of work, meaning you look at an entire game tape of his, and you can't go back at the end of it and say, wow, what a game. I mean, I've never really seen an entire game tape where I can be like, wow, that was a real solid performance from start to finish, because there's not many of them that he's done. And, I just don't understand it. And now here we go. They've done all this. They've made all these moves. And here we are. They're back to signing Cam Newton, who we haven't heard from since he was released from the Patriots a week and a half before the season began. And what's Cam supposed to do? He's supposed to save their season when he hasn't thrown a pass all year. I mean, I think he looks like he's in good shape. He's supposedly healthy, but I don't know. I mean, they've got problems on offense, and I'm just not sure if a 30-whatever-year-old Cam Newton is going to be able to come in and solve those problems. Do I think he's an upgrade over Sam Darnold? Yeah, I'll give you that. I really do, but that's not saying much.
But was he even there when Rule was there? Was Rule there when he got there, or first year?
When Rule got there, he was there.
Okay.
And he had not been released yet, but he was in treatment. He was rehabbing his shoulder, and essentially the two guys were in the building together for about 2 months, and then Rule was part of the decision makers that decided to cut him and release him.
So he's never even run the Rule offense. So we don't know. We don't know if he's compatible with that. We don't know. No. Cam is a very hybrid type player. You have to have a specific, and I mean, he may have changed now. Maybe he's going through his Randall Cunningham renaissance, but he definitely was a player where you had to build the offense around his specific skill sets. Yeah. And Rule didn't want him when he was thought to be healthy enough to do it. Now he's kind of broken down, so it makes no sense at all on any level, and especially. I understand, with an indictment of what we talked about before in the previews this season, looking around the NFL and seeing just there's no backup quarterbacks anywhere. I mean, even even in the best case scenario, and maybe they believed in Sam Darnold. The big thing about Sam Darnold is not just his performance, his ability to stay healthy has been his problem throughout his career, and did not have an acceptable backup. Expecting him to lose 2 to 3 games. I mean, how many guys lose games with mononucleosis in NFL?
Yeah,
and also he's not vaccinated. So
and the season has been pushed to an extra playoff game and 17 games. So the season's longer than it's ever been, and they were expecting Sam Darnold to make it through. He's already been hurt twice,
and he's not vaccinated either.
And we're not even halfway through the season. He's already been hurt twice, and now he's on injured reserve. So they went into this year with the glass menagerie, Sam Darnold and P.J. Walker backing him up, and thought they were going to be successful. That's insanity.
Yeah, and they, even Robbie Anderson's had enough of Sam Darnold. If you saw what went on in the sideline, and I don't blame him. I mean, Robbie Anderson was his biggest supporter, and this is the same old Sam, it is just ridiculous that they thought they were going to get through. And I hate to say it because I like Matt Rule. And I think in the proper perspective, maybe he was given too much power. Maybe he needed to have a GM that could let him coach and let the GM figure out all the extra thing about getting the players signed and everything else. Maybe we have to go back to giving more power to these GMs and not thinking everybody can be Bill Belichick that runs it from soups to nuts. I mean, it's a shame for the people of Carolina. It's a good football town, and right now they're at a loss because they're probably not going to lose enough to get their next franchise quarterback. And I don't even know if there's a franchise quarterback coming out this year.
Yeah, well, and the Panthers do have a general manager. They have Scott Fitterer, who honestly I can tell you I've never heard of. Yeah. But he is their general manager, and he was hired this year, January 14th of 2021. He was hired. And so let's be honest. I mean, Sam Darnold's done there. Yeah. I know that he's on the books for $18 million next year, so he's probably going to be there just because there's really no point to cutting him because he's $18 million guaranteed for next year, no matter what. That's dead money. I mean, that's dead money. So you're probably going to keep him as your backup, I guess, but he's not going to be their starter next year. And I mean, I doubt Cam's going to be. So now you're in a situation where you're going to win just enough games where you're not going to have a high enough draft pick to draft a quarterback. There's not really a ton of guys, veterans that are going to be available. And so you're going to be in the exact same situation next year that you're in right now.
In a division that's going to have Tampa Bay, they're going to have the Saints, and as much as Atlanta, as much as we thought, or as much as I thought it was the end of the Matt Ryan era, the guy looks to have gotten some kind of a swig from the Tom Brady fountain of youth the way he's playing this year. So it's not going to be getting easy for him next year either. And it's just a craziness. And then we got OBJ, who finally got to LA. He supposedly wanted to get there when he moved to Giants. That was his target, to get out to LA. Now, is it going to be good for the Rams? I mean, how's it going to affect Kupp? I mean, this guy's been probably the most consistent wide receiver all year long. You got Stafford out there. You got the coach McVay, who's supposed to be an offensive genius. I understand, the Sean Jackson experiment didn't work, but OBJ. Well,
he was playing pretty well, honestly, until he started getting pissed off that he wasn't getting enough balls. He had 8 receptions for 221 yards. He was averaging almost 30 yards a catch. Deshaun Jackson was. So until he started getting pissed that he wasn't getting the ball enough, he was actually producing for the first time in 5 years. So if he was unhappy about the number of balls he was getting, what's OBJ going to do? I mean, let's be honest. They've got Cooper Kupp. They've got Robert Woods. They've got Van Jefferson. They've got Tyler Higbee. And then they've got the slew of running backs. I mean, how many targets per game is going to be out there for a guy who, A, is not what he used to be, and B, doesn't know this offense at all?
And he was supposed to be the missing piece in Cleveland and turned out not to be. When he got to Cleveland, they said, oh, God, with Landry and with Baker, with Chubb, who's going to stop this team? And as you said, his skills are not what they used to be. He doesn't like getting hit. No football player really likes getting hit on offense. I mean, I'll say that a lot of these guys don't like getting hit. But the fact of the matter is, there's something about OBJ that makes him not work out in any locker room. Everybody, the locker room, there's usually no gossip about him being a bad guy or anything else. But you know what? Somehow they move on from him, and somehow, I mean, I think there's a brotherhood in the NFL that will not speak badly about some guys unless they're really, really bad. You have to really, really, really be bad for the teammates to speak out against you. But I think the Rams are taking him on, and it could be good. it could be bad. The only thing that came to mind with me, and nothing against Deion Sanders. I know he's going through a health crisis right now, and I wish him well. But what cracked me up was when he went to Dallas and when he went to San Francisco in his career to win rings, and he was given credit for being the missing piece. He was joining championship teams. He was joining teams that were already assembled. All he had to do was do his job, which he did better than most people in NFL history. He's right up there. If he isn't the best cornerback, cover corner in NFL history, he's in the top 3. You know, I'll put Mike Haynes, maybe Lester Hayes, maybe those kind of guys up there with him. But, I mean, he did it better than most people ever did. And Revis, I'd put up with him. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is
you know, put Revis
yeah,
up there with Deion?
Well, he's in the top 5. I wouldn't put him next to Revis. I'd put him in the top 5. But, I mean, the best guys I've ever seen, really, I would say it was Mike Haynes, Lester Hayes, Revis, and Deion. And there's one, Louis Wright of the Denver comes to mind. He was another one of my favorite cornerbacks. They took away half the field whenever they were on it.
No, and Revis was a good cover corner, but I mean, Deion Sanders was a touchdown waiting to happen.
Yeah, I'm saying Deion was the best, but I mean, you know, there's guys in his realm, not with him, but in his realm. I mean, you know, Darrell Green, I thought was a great cover corner.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, but my biggest point of it was the fact of the matter is he was the last piece of what was already a championship team. You know what I mean? Dallas was already winning championships before he got there. San Francisco had a 15-year reign at the top of the AFC or the NFC West by the time he got there. It wasn't like, okay, because Deion got here, they already became a championship team. And that's what I'm saying about OBJ. The Rams have been to a Super Bowl without him. The Rams have they brought in Stafford thinking he would change things, and he did. He's been an upgrade. But here comes that OBJ problem, which is he gets in quarterbacks' minds, and they feel they have to get the ball to him and use him. It's a toy they need to use. And it was funny. I was listening to the guys on Sports Center and stuff, and as much as he complained about him, nobody ever got him the ball as much and in better places than Eli Manning in his career. And you know, it's funny that, you know, Eli was able to really utilize his skills better than most guys did.
Well, yeah, and that's back when he was good. So, yeah congrats on that. But he's not been the same guy the past few years. I mean, his stats have dramatically decreased the last few years. And it's interesting to me, the Rams, what they've been doing. I mean, they shipped Jared Goff out, gave up on the #1 pick that they made in the draft. They basically don't have a #1 pick. I don't know if you know this, till like 2027 now, because all they've been doing is adding pieces. They got Stafford, gave up a couple #1s there. Then they went out and added Von Miller a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And now they've added OBJ. So, you know, they're going all in. I mean, I understand what they're doing. It's very obvious what they're doing. They're pushing all their chips into the middle of the table, and they're saying this is our year, and we're going for it. And you know, congratulations to them for you know, doing that. But you know, we've seen the last few weeks, you know, some chips in their armor. I mean, they lost to the Titans. They didn't look good in that game. That game wasn't as close as the score made it look like at the end, because there was a touchdown or two given up in garbage time. So, you know, does OBJ put them over the top? I don't think so. Now, this year's been very competitive. This year's been very hard to predict. It's been very up and down. There's a lot of parity. So I really think it's anybody's Super Bowl at this point. But I'm just not so sure that a half broke down Odell Beckham is going to put the Rams over the top.
Well, and it's funny because I heard some of the pundits talking. Well, you know, they're trying to take a page out of the Dodgers and Lakers playbook on how to win. Well, those are two different sports and two totally different ways of approaching the sport. Yes, you go out and get superstars in baseball because most of the draft choices don't make it through the minor leagues. So you don't care if you lose a draft choice down there. Who cares? Most of the guys you draft will flame out in Double A or Triple A. The very few get through to the major leagues, and even fewer become superstars. And in the NFL, as well, you well know, or the NBA, I should say, you only need two guys, and they got their two guys. Yeah. They got Anthony Davis and they got LeBron. One player does not usually change outside of maybe quarterback. Even a quarterback. You can bring up Brady. Brady got a team waiting for him. I'd love to see Brady go to the Detroit Lions and do the same thing he did last year. It wouldn't happen.
Yeah, go to the Jaguars. Go across the bay over there and across this, the state in Florida and hit up the Jaguars and see how that goes. Would have been a completely different 2020 campaign for Mr. TB12 had he chosen the Jaguars instead of the Buccaneers. Now, we'll give him credit for his team selection, but it looked a lot easier for him because of what he had around him. And I let's be honest, Stafford's been nothing short of amazing. He got almost 70% completion percentage. He's got 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's averaging 312 yards a game. This is the best Matt Stafford that we've seen. So what happens now? I'm very interested to see whether these stats improve, if he gets better. Hard to believe that's going to happen, or whether he goes backwards with OBJ being added to the mix.
And but the worst thing is the other thing is I root for Matt Stafford to be successful. He's a good guy, stand-up guy. He's been through a lot of tragedy with his wife's illness and stuff like that, and he's always been a great guy. But the worst thing is, because we are who we are and we live in the times we do, the narrative is now the Rams. It's not about Matt Stafford anymore. It's not about McVay. It's not about the team. It's about OBJ, and that's what he does to the team. The narrative becomes around him, his happiness, his success, and everything pivots off that. And that's going to be how well McVay and his coaching staff can adjust to that and get OBJ to adjust to it.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck. I've never, he's proven to me he doesn't really want to be a role player. He wants to be the number one receiver on the team. He wants to get the majority of the targets. And he's not the number one receiver on this team. Cooper Kupp has 74 catches for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. And,
we're half a season left.
Yeah, we've only played 9 games. So he's the number one. He's probably the best receiver in the NFL. So you're not taking his role. What role are you going to take? I mean, I just don't see him wanting to be a number 2 or a number 3. Maybe he does. Maybe this whole experience has, matured him. But I'm having a hard time believing that.
Yet to be seen. We'll see about that. I want to touch a little bit on the Jets and what we talked about before we came on, and then we'll get to the Dolphins and the Ravens last night. But the Mike White era of the Jets, that it seems like the Jet fan wants to see Mike White succeed rather than Zach Wilson, not even a quarter into his NFL career, or our NFL first season, I should say. They've already given up on Zach Wilson because of a mop-up role against the Patriots, a great game against Cincinnati, and then a game we'll never know how he would have done against Indianapolis. All of a sudden, Mike White is the second coming of Joe Namath. And this is why I see the Jets always failing, because they don't know how to pick quarterbacks, and even when they pick the quarterback, we don't know if they ever get it right. I mean, I feel sorry for Zach Wilson, because for a young quarterback to come to the big city, and now Mike White is in the catbird seat, because eventually you're going to have to put Zach Wilson back in, and anytime he does anything wrong, the cheers will be going up for Mike White. Mike White is now. You've got a quarterback controversy. And congratulations! In the middle of Robert Sala's first year, you've given him a quarterback controversy, which probably didn't need to be done.
Well, this all goes back to before the season when we discussed the prospects of the Jets coming out, and we were like, what are they doing at quarterback? Because they've got this kid they just drafted, they've got Mike White, and they have another guy, that was on the roster that, we don't even need to discuss. But they had no veteran. They had nobody that either of those two guys could lean on. They had nobody that could help Zach Wilson learn how to be a pro. And let's be honest, it's looked like that. It's looked like he's just been kind of feeling it out and trying to figure it out himself. And I really don't blame him for some of the things that have gone wrong. And now, of course, he's injured. And so they've had to throw, some backups out there. They've signed Joe Flacco. And now, they've got this, the fans have decided to back Mike White. And, I don't really get it, to be honest. I know that, being a Jets fan myself, we're starved for success. Any glimpse of success, we want to pour gasoline on it and pray that it ignites. But I don't see this guy being a long-term answer. And like you said, the only thing it's doing is creating a controversy where there really isn't one, and potentially delaying the progress of Zach Wilson and figuring out whether or not he's going to be a franchise quarterback. And now Zach Wilson practiced fully today, but he was practicing with the scout team. So what the hell is that about? And why would you not, if he's healthy enough to play, why would you not start him? Why are we starting Mike White? I don't get it, and I don't think it's going to go well this weekend against the Bills. The Bills are already pissed because they look like garbage against the Jaguars. They definitely had their worst game of the year. They're going to want to get right. They're going to want to right the ship. They understand that there's no more gimme away games at this point. They're 5-3. The Patriots are nipping on their heels. And they're in a win now mode. They've lost 2 out of the last 3, and this is a big time game for them. And this is a big time game for their quarterback. He didn't look good against the Jaguars, and I'm sure he's going to want to put a solid game under his belt after that performance. So I don't expect this to go well for Mr. White and the Jets against the Bills this weekend.
No, and I'm glad you brought up Josh Allen, because he's starting to get some pushback that he's not playing as well as he did last year, and it's starting to show. Well, you brought it up in the in our preview about the fact that they still haven't solved a running back situation for the guy.
Yeah,
and the only guy who has it worse right now is Lamar Jackson, as far as having to perform offense by himself.
Yeah.
So, this is what happens when a quarterback is out there on the island by himself, having to be the top runner and the top performer, along with his job about running an offense, passing the ball. He has to be their leading runner. Eventually, defenses figure it out, and they take a beating mentally, and they take a beating physically. So we'll see what happens there. But let's get back. Let's get it in last night. The Ravens, the Dolphins come up with a much-needed victory for them. They now have won 2 in a row. I don't know how much that means. I mean, you and I both like Brian Flores, and as we talked about before we came on the air, the Tua situation we'll get to in a minute. But Lamar Jackson, they just sat there and they said, we have nothing to lose. Lamar is the best player in the field. Our job is to stop Lamar. That's what that whole defense is about last night. It was just, we've got to take Lamar out of this game, and it's not going to be about a spy. It's about 10 spies. And that's what they did with him.
Yeah, I mean, they did. They understand that, this whole offense, this whole team really has been put upon Lamar's back. And somehow he's managed to win 6 out of 8 prior to last night, basically by himself. And last night they just went all out after him. And he still threw for 240 yards and was their leading rusher. But, it wasn't enough. And I do give Coach Flores a lot of credit, because the game plan was solid. They were They were putting 9 guys on the line right in Lamar's face. He didn't know who was coming. He didn't know who was bailing. The offensive line sure as hell had no idea what any of them were doing. They really exposed, we talk about the weaknesses at receiver, which there are many on the Ravens. We talk about the holes there are in the backfield because they're missing 4 of their top 4 running backs are all on IR and not playing. But really, I think one of the biggest problems on this team is their offensive line. And the offensive line is just not better than they were last year. And, Villanueva is just he's a mess. I mean, I don't know how to put it delicately. He's a mess. And that's why the Steelers moved off of him, because they realized it and they knew that they couldn't keep Ben up for an entire season with that guy out there. And the Ravens thought they could make something out of him. And he's just he's a barroom door over there flipping back and forth with whoever's coming at him. And, last night it was even more evident as Lamar was sacked 4 times, but every throw was rushed. He didn't have time to set up and throw in the pocket. They had 94 yards rushing, but it really, a lot of it came on, some chunk plays there towards the end of the game. And they couldn't get anything going in the run game, and they didn't have time to throw it. The offensive line was dominated by a front that doesn't really impress me, to be honest with, as far as the Dolphins go.
Yeah, and just when we just started talking just a couple minutes ago, one thing that came to mind is, for a organization that gets, touted as one of the best run organizations in the NFL, it's surprising that they didn't reach out and get Mark Ingram when he was available and bring him back. At least he knows the game plans and everything else, and he would have been a better suited guy to be in their backfield right now, probably than he is with the New Orleans Saints. I mean, that probably would have been the move they should have made a couple of weeks ago to bring him in, and at least give Lamar a little hope in the backfield. Even if he only gets 3 yards of carry, at least it sets you up for 3rd and short, where it's easier for Lamar to figure out what to do.
No, I think that's that's an excellent point by you. I think they should have gotten Mark Ingram. They should have gotten anyone. Why did they not trade for anybody at the trade deadline? This is a team that's missing 4 running backs: Tyson Williams, Hill, Justice Hill, Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, all gone. Not to mention Latavius Murray is now hurt. So that's 5 running backs they're down. They've got wide receivers that have been hurt all year long. They've got offensive linemen that are on IR. Ronnie Staley, their best offensive lineman, he's on injured reserve. Ben Cleveland, their starting left guard, he's on injured reserve. Why did they not go get anyone to help this team out?
Yeah. Especially in that, well, we're going to get to that division in a minute. I mean, because it's all getting jumbled up together. They're all right next to each other right now. So there is no little room for error in this division. And with 8 games left in the or 7 games left in the season, it's going to be a sprint to the end for this. And I don't see a favorite in there. I would think, we'll get to Cleveland and Steelers in a minute, but that's going to be an interesting thing to see going down the stretch. Now, the Dolphins, as you brought up before we went on the air, here's another situation where, well, is Tua your quarterback of the future or not your quarterback of the future? And as I speculated was, Brian Flores just wants to save his job right now and get a win. So he trusts Brissett more than he trusts Tua at this stage. But in the flip side of that coin, you're never going to get Tua to be a quarterback unless he's out there on the field.
Yeah. Well, and what do they think of him? I mean, obviously not much. They've been trying to trade for Deshaun Watson. Obviously, the owner's interested in upgrading at that position and bringing in Watson. Obviously, the coaching staff wants to go in that direction. So, why not at least figure out what you've got with Tua, even though he's been hurt? He was hurt last year coming in as a rookie. Then he comes in this year and he's been hurt twice. He had the broken ribs. He's got the finger. But he was healthy enough to dress last night. He obviously was healthy enough to play because he went in and played. So why the hell isn't he starting? I mean, at least don't you think you want to figure out what you've got, unless they already think they know what they've got with him, which apparently isn't much, because they feel more comfortable putting Jacoby Brissett out there. And then when they ask him after the game, who's your starter next week? We'll see. So, I mean, it's just they have no confidence in this guy. And apparently they don't even want to see more of him because they're trying to keep him off the field at this point. And once again, it's confusing me.
Well, and you can go back to when they drafted him. He was coming off a major injury in his senior year at Alabama. And, to take him that high in the draft was kind of a risk. And the way Justin Herbert turned out to be out in San Diego, they look even worse for it. But, it was, I think at the time I might have mentioned that I was really scared about the kid because that was a major injury he had in his last year at Alabama. I mean, something that you don't usually come back from, even though, we see Dak playing well this year on maybe a similar type injury. This is a guy who had to learn how to be a professional quarterback, plus rehab that leg back to what it used to be. So I don't know, maybe that's added on. But right now, they're another team that's in crisis. I mean, and right now, it looks like the more things change, the more things stay the same in the AFC East, because you got the Dolphins and the Jets, who are both messes at the bottom, while Buffalo and the Patriots seem to be heading in the right direction, and both will probably make the playoffs.
Yeah, nothing confuses me more than the Miami Dolphins. I mean, let's be honest, they've got to be the biggest disappointment of the NFL this year. I mean, they started the season off with Tua as their starter. They win the first game against the Patriots 17-16 by a point in New England. Then they rattle off 7 losses in a row, and we're like, okay, well, they're done. And now they've won 2 games in a row. I mean, granted, one of them was against the Texans, which they barely won 17-9. But then last night they take out the Ravens. And like you said, before we got on the air when you were talking, they didn't have anything to lose. I mean, they were 2-7 going into this game last night. They kind of had a back against the wall mentality. And if they can keep that going for the rest of the year, they may have a chance, because their next game, they're going into the bye now, and they don't play again until the 21st against the Jets. So, I don't know. I don't know what to think of the Dolphins at this point, but their next 3 games are the Jets, the Panthers, the Giants, and then the Jets again. If you go into 4 games, those are all winnable games for them. I mean, they could be 7-7 like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to think of, but they really could be back to 500 before you know it.
Especially when they just took out the Ravens. So,
yeah.
All right, let's take a quick look at the divisions. We got the AFC North, as they just said. You got Baltimore 6-3, Pittsburgh 5-3, Cleveland 5-4, Cincinnati 5-4. Who's the fakers? Who's the guy? Who is there a faker in there? Is there somebody that realistically should take charge of those 4?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I think if you had to ask me right now which teams I believe in the most, I would say the Steelers and the Browns. Just because, Lamar, they're just putting too much on him. And if we just went through a minute ago, I'm not going to go back over it, but we just went through all the guys that are hurt on offense. They've got 10 guys on injured reserve on defense. Some of them lost for the year. We already talked about LJ Fort. We already talked about Peters, who's their best cover guy. I mean, they're missing so many pieces. And then to add nothing into the, before the trade deadline, I think the Ravens are in trouble. And, as much as I love Lamar and as much as I think, in my estimation, he is the MVP of the league at this point, I just have a hard time believing they're going to be able to ride him like they have been and be successful. So we'll see what happens. The Bengals, I think, have come back down to earth a little bit. And I think that's just because they were winning a couple games they probably shouldn't have won. And I think the Browns, now that they've got some of the distractions out of their in their rearview mirror, I think they've got a better shot. And the Steelers are starting to play better. So I think I'm at this point, the Steelers have won 4 in a row, and I'm starting to believe in them a little bit more. They've got a running game now. And I think the Steelers and the Browns, in my estimation, are the two teams playing the best right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the one thing I do that strikes me a little bit about the Steelers is the point differential when they're at a -8. But that's, their defense has not been playing that well early this season. They had a couple of big chunks they gave up, so that hurts them a little bit. So you can't always look at that. But yeah, I would definitely say that right now those teams are the teams I would think about. Like you said, can Lamar hold up for the rest of the year? And it's still, the Bengals are still learning. They, I think they're a year away. I don't know if Zach Taylor is the coach that's going to take them there, but Joe Burrow and the boys are still learning. The South, it's up to Tennessee. I mean, Indianapolis, they still got some work to do to catch up with Tennessee. And Tennessee, a big victory last week over the Rams. I mean, what more can you say about that team?
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, they looked good in that victory over the Rams. They looked good against the Chiefs, obviously. They beat the Bills. The game against the Colts worried me a little bit just because the defensive issues in that game were pretty apparent, and that troubled me. But when you look at their schedule, they play the Saints this week, which they're playing the Saints at the right time. I've got to imagine that, I think that Coach Payton is going to trot Trevor Siemian out there again, which I think is a mistake. Coach Payton knows a lot more about football than I do. I'm not going to try and, argue that point. But I've watched Trevor Siemian play before, and I think he sucks. So if it was up to me, I would put Taysom Hill out there and just do what you can with him and try and win out the rest of these games. You're not going to win with Trevor Siemian. I'm sorry. I know he won that one game, but that was against Geno. And hell, I could have gone out there and potentially won that game. So, I think they can beat the Saints, and then they've got the Texans, Patriots, Jaguars. So they've got some winnable games coming up. And the Colts, I just don't trust their quarterback. And, they're going to get a win this week because they play the Jaguars, and then they play the Bills, the Buccaneers back-to-back. So, I look for them to struggle, and I think that the Titans are going to be on top of that division just based on how the schedules play out.
And it's kind of shocking that Peyton's so reticent to go with Taysom Hill when now he was his man last year.
Yeah. Last year when he had the opportunity to either,
use Jameis.
Inject Jameis into the lineup when Drew Brees got hurt or play Taysom, he throws Taysom out there. And now when Jameis goes down, Taysom's not getting to play quarterback. So I'm traditionally confused by what they're doing at the quarterback position. And I'm not sure why, one decent couple of quarters by Trevor Siemian led, Coach Payton to think that this guy's going to take him home. I know he's not. So hopefully he'll figure that out sooner than later.
Then we got the AFC West. There's another division that's bunched up. Kansas City on a 2-game winning streak, but neither of them would I say is impressive. I mean, the Kansas City's in crisis, whether they want to, accept it or not. I mean, if the Giants had held on to that interception, Mahomes is not playing like Mahomes of a year ago or 2 years ago. Definitely not 2 years ago when he was all the rage. And if let's face facts, if Mr. Vaccinated was in there last week, Green Bay would have won that game.
Yeah,
there's just no doubt in my mind about that. So Kansas City's in a crisis. Oakland probably should have beaten the Giants. The Giants bad clock management by Joe Judge down the stretch when he played for the field goal and left so much time in his hand. They got lucky with a strip sack to stop that. The Chargers have come back down to earth, back to the pack, and Denver keeps hanging around. So whatever team comes out of this, I think is going to be the weakest division winner right now, unless they start playing well over the last 7 weeks.
Yeah, I think this weekend's game is huge. I think it's tremendously huge where
Chiefs Raiders.
the Chiefs are traveling to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. The Raiders have been through so much this year. We already had the Gruden issue earlier in the season where he was replaced. The new coach took over. Then we had the Henry Ruggs III incident. He's been released. And then we had Damon Arnett, former Buckeye, who I don't even like saying that now after what happened with him. And so basically the two guys they drafted in 2019 are now both gone and off the roster. So that entire first round of picks where they had two guys are both gone. And I just feel like it's a lot for them to overcome with all these things happening around them. And, I think this weekend is going to be a really good barometer as to where they're at and to show us whether or not they can be a factor in this division. They played the Chiefs twice in the next 4 weeks. So I think this weekend's game is huge, and I think it'll tell us a lot as to who may have a chance to win this division. Now, if you look at the Chiefs' schedule, they got to play the Raiders this week. Then they play the Cowboys. Then they play the Broncos, who just beat the Cowboys. Then they play the Raiders again, and then the Chargers, and then the Steelers. So, let's hope they figure it out really soon, or else they could be in a lot of trouble because it doesn't get any easier for them.
Like I said, I think that the league is caught up a little bit to Patrick Mahomes. Not to say he's any less talented, but they figured out, how to take his weapons away from him and how to frustrate him. And it's time for Andy Reid. I don't know if Andy Reid's still calling the plays or who calls the plays there anymore, but it's time to come up with some new way of doing things. And there's another team that at the trade deadline should have gone out looking for a running back. Something to take the pressure off. I mean, there was rumors that OBJ was going to end up there before he ended up with the Rams. So maybe they did try and get something done at the last minute. But, right now the Chiefs, it's kind of like their window is shrinking, and they're going to have to tweak it a little bit to come back up and give Mahomes his second window of championship level play. It's going to be interesting. Those two divisions. So the North and the West are going to be very interesting, while the East and the South, I think, are pretty much should go to form the rest of the way. And we have the NFC, where you have, the Cowboys very shockingly played a dud game. But this is a Cowboy team that kind of goes to form with this stuff. They read their press clippings too well. I think they thought having Dak back against Denver, they could just roll the footballs onto the field and win it. And I think that this Denver team is a little bit more talented than they realized.
Yeah, I think so too. I also think that Dak, that injury affected him, and being out for the time that he was out and coming back, I just think that the timing was off a little bit. They laid an egg, but they've still looked pretty solid throughout the year, and there's really nobody nipping at their heels behind them right now. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe they just felt like they were so far ahead at 6-1. And the next closest team, was 3-6, that they just felt like they were, nobody was close to them. But, I feel like that the Eagles are better than their 3-6 record. I really do, for some reason. They are a +9 differential, and I like what I've seen out of Jalen Hurts, to be honest with you. He doesn't have much help. He's got Jordan Howard as his running back at this point, and, the receivers are not my favorite group, position group in the league of anybody. So we'll see what happens there. But I think the Cowboys will get back into the flow this week, and I think they're still going to be atop that division.
And then we go to Green Bay. Have we heard anything on Rodgers? Is he going to be back? I hadn't heard anything today.
Yeah, they expect him to play. From all that I've heard, that he was already essentially cleared medically, and that all he's got to do is basically have a couple of tests on his heart and things of that nature to show whether he can pass a physical and be ready for the game But my anticipation is he's going to be out there. He's going to be starting against the Seahawks.
Well, the only thing I'll say about this division is, first of all, the Mike Zimmer era is pretty much officially over. Even though his team plays well enough to lose right now. Yeah. Lamar Jackson did a phenomenal job coming back and upsetting him, last week. But still, a loss is a loss, and that's what you're judged on as a coach. The Bears, it's a shame that Fields wasn't in there from the beginning. It's a shame that they lost that game to the Steelers, which the referees gave to the Steelers on a stupid taunting penalty that is just becoming ridiculous in the NFL. I'm not one who likes
what's pissing me off is they keep trying to justify that call. I've heard a number of people come out and they're saying, the officials in regards to that call, if you look and taunt the other side's bench, we will call this penalty. Like that call was warranted. A, that call wasn't warranted. And B, give me a freaking break. I mean, you screwed up. You cost a team a game for a ridiculous taunting call. And let's be honest, that wasn't the one bad call in that game. I mean,
it wasn't. It wasn't, but it happened late, and it had the impact, the final nail in the coffin.
Well, right, but that Marlon Humphrey helmet-to-helmet hit on Justin Fields on third down, that would have been a first down in the red zone for the Bears going in instead of leaving them out of field goal range and turning it over on downs. I mean, there was a number of calls in that game that were all favored towards the Steelers, and they'd already decided that they wanted Pittsburgh to win that game before it ever started.
No, it was a terribly officiated game. But, I mean, the thing back to the taunting issue is there wasn't even a fight started over it. Nobody was shoving or anything else. So where was the taunting? I mean, we talk about the no fun league, and I understand we don't want the crazy celebrations that used to be, the showing off and this stuff like that. But then why do they still let the guys do the first down thing? Why did they still I mean, he jumped up in the air, spun around, and yelled and screamed. We don't even know what he said. And in a crowd, I'll guarantee you, nobody on the Steelers sideline knew what he was saying.
Well, when they threw the flag, he wasn't jumping around or doing anything. He was looking in the direction of their sideline. Hell, he could have been looking at his girlfriend in the stands for all we know. But he certainly wasn't saying anything. And that's when the guy threw the flag. It made no sense. And it was a late flag, and it cost him the ball game.
And, I mean, didn't he get cut by the Steelers?
Yeah.
So maybe he was saying something to a friend of him, saying, I told you I was going to get one tonight.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? He wasn't saying anything when they threw the flag, but maybe he was looking at his buddies that he used to practice with every day. Who the hell knows?
It's just ridiculous. But, I mean, the thing about it is they put Field – the main thing is they put Field in there too late because he is showing week in and week out he's ready, and he's just a couple weeks behind in putting it all together.
It's very funny how I think I told everyone on the show that Sam Darnold wasn't going to be a quarterback in this league, and then I also stated that Justin Fields should have been the starter from day one in Chicago, and both those things have been basically proven.
Totally proven right. You got Tampa Bay, which, of course, it seems like it's being scripted to give Tom Brady the easiest run to the playoffs. I mean, we talked about New Orleans, the mess they're in right now, unless they can find some lightning in a bottle with Taysom Hill and their defense. Their defense is phenomenal. I mean, they have a plus 46 in their defense. Yeah. But, I mean, it's asking a bit much for them to be able to run out that 7 games left. I mean, I see them being more like a 500 team.
And Kamara's out. He's injured and not playing this weekend. And their left tackle, Teron Armstead, is out. So they're already missing their quarterback, and now they're missing their one good running back and their left tackle. So I just don't see any way they can win this game this weekend. Now, hell, stranger things have happened this year, but I think they're going to be in for a rough weekend.
I totally agree with you. And the team that keeps sticking around, I mean, they're not going to be anything. But, I mean, actually, they may be screwing themselves is the Atlanta Falcons, because I mean, you got to be impressed with Matt Ryan. He's been playing very, very well with a young, talented with Pitts, but for the most part, not really the most talented offense around him. But I mean, they're 4-4, and I would have thought at this stage they'd be something like 2-6, 1-7. I was ready to put my I guess my cousin, if you want to call it, we both have the last name Ryan, into the dirt in his career. But Matt Ryan's got to be somebody that you got have respect for with the way he's playing this year.
Yeah, him, and also my boy Cordarrelle Patterson right here. This kid is leading the team in rushing, and he's second on the team in receiving, and he's got 9 touchdowns. So this guy is finally being utilized correctly, and I think we got to give Arthur Smith some credit. It's taken him a little while, but he's figured out what to do with the personnel he's got. And I think he's getting a lot out of them, especially considering, really their best wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, isn't even playing.
Yeah, and it shows, as much as we like to throw these guys under the bus and throw them into retirement as fast as possible, having an experienced quarterback, especially when it's been an MVP, was within 30 minutes of winning a Super Bowl if they had coached him right in the second half, probably. Matt Ryan having stability at quarterback helps a lot. Yeah. And he's definitely able to keep up with what he's been doing his whole career. Next, the West, where Arizona has 1 loss. I mean, it was bound to happen, but I mean, everything's going well for them. They're plus 122 point differential, but the quarterback is now beat up, and we have to figure out when he'll be healthy again. If he'll probably not be healthy again until the offseason. But can they make it with him only half his an ankle injury with him when he depends so much on his feet? It's tough.
No. I mean, this is what happened last year. He was amazing. He was in the running for the MVP, and then he got banged up, and that was the end of them. Not to mention that, but they're also missing Rondale Moore. They're missing Chase Edmonds. DeAndre Hopkins is questionable. They're missing some guys off the offensive line. They're a banged up team right now, but what really matters is their quarterback. And as much as me and you both like Colt McCoy as a backup, he's not Kyler Murray. No. And they've got they've got the bulk of their schedule still coming up. I mean, they get to play Carolina this weekend, which is nice, but then they've got to go to Seattle with Russell Wilson. They've got to play Chicago, then they got to play the Rams. So we'll see what happens, but I think this is not a good time for Kyle Murray to start being banged up.
No, and that's the only thing. The one thing they did say about him coming in, he's got the arm, he's got the speed, but he is a smaller guy, so you don't like getting him hit that much. The Rams, we covered the Rams. We know what's going on with them. They're sitting in a nice spot. Seattle, I think San Francisco's done. San Francisco is a mess. Seattle, are they done? I mean, you look at it. We know New Orleans looks like they're going to be going downhill. Atlanta, we just talked about. We don't know if they have enough. There's going to be a lot of 500 teams. Unlike the AFC, there's going to be a lot of 500 teams. Can Russell Wilson coming back put Seattle back into the wild card race?
We'll find out. We'll find out this weekend. I mean, they have no more margin for error. Let's be honest. The margin for error was while Russell was gone and Geno wasn't able to really do what they needed him to do, which was, win more games than he lost while Russ was out. Russ came back a little bit quicker than we expected. And, that kudos to him, but they need to win right now. And if they go down and they lose another game this weekend to the Green Bay Packers, well, you can pretty much stick a fork in them, because then they'll be 3-6 and still having to play, a bunch of those games against the West opponents. So, I think this weekend is a huge game for them. and hopefully they've got to pray that Aaron Rodgers is a little shaky in his return.
That never works out. The worst thing about Aaron Rodgers, love him, hate him, when he's got that chip on his shoulder, he usually shows up.
Oh yeah, he's going to be pissed, and that's usually not good for others when he comes in pissed off. So we'll see. I think he's been through the ringer, and he should be. He lied, and then started getting mad at people because he lied, and it's just like, dude, you didn't think there'd be backlash for you essentially lying? I mean, yeah. So, but he is good at quarterback, so we'll see. The Packers, like you said, would have won last week if he'd have been out there. So the defense, I think, is playing pretty darn good football right now, and they're heading in the right direction. So with him back in the lineup, they should be able to score again. No thanks to Mr. Jordan Love. What a horrible draft pick that was. That guy is not an NFL quarterback, and he's never going to be one.
And the worst thing is, and all it did was PO Aaron.
Yeah, all you did with that, the only thing you did with that draft pick was piss off the MVP,
your best player.
And, you've been paying for that ever since.
But we got to get to your picks. But I got to say one message I got to get out there to Aaron Rodgers, and this is from the heart, Aaron. I don't care which way you want to play it. Much respect to your talent and your career. But if you're going to be a WTF guy, if you're going to be arrogant, be arrogant. Don't cry and whine when the court of public opinion goes against you. You know what I mean? If you're going to be one of these guys that says, the hell with the world, I'm going to do it my way. I know better than you. Stick to your guns. Be that guy. Don't sit there and suddenly go, well, why are they penny picking on me? No, Aaron, you're either got to give the mea culpa or give the finger. And if you can't give the finger in a half-hearted way, and that's what he did last week. He first of all gave the finger, and when things started going against him, he gave a half-hearted mea culpa, and now he's all upset. And his girlfriend out in Hollywood's upset too.
Yeah, poor Aaron.
Poor Aaron, poor Shailene. They've got such tough lives.
Yeah, counting their millions while we all try and pay our power bill. Must be nice. But,
and we have to get vaccinated.
Yeah, I would like to say that I was 2 for 2 last week, as I picked the Patriots over the Panthers, and I picked the Ravens over the Vikings. So I would like to thank Lamar for carrying them on an overtime win when it wasn't looking good for me there towards the end. So, but this week I'm going to go with the Titans again. Picking them to take out the Saints. I'm not loving what I'm seeing, and those injuries I think are starting to pile up for the New Orleans Saints. So I'm going to take the Titans. I like the way their defense has been playing the past couple weeks, and I like the way that Tannehill's been playing. So we'll see if that continues. And then I know that the Falcons, everybody's loving on them, but I feel like the Cowboys are going to get right. And I feel like they're gonna show back up. So too much talent there for me against the Falcons, and I'm picking the Cowboys to win that one.
Especially after what Denver did to them, they got a reason to show up this week. So
yeah, they got their asses kicked basically 30-0 at home. I know they scored 2 touchdowns late, but that was after the game was decided.
Yeah, that was just to try and make it look better in the press the next day. We got man coverage coming up this Sunday. You got Steve Bellisari going to be your guest with Rico and you. A great guest, former Ohio State quarterback. Had a cup of coffee with the Rams and the pros. Really a guy who knows college football and the college football game. And I want to tell everybody, if you haven't yet, go back to last week's show if you're a Notre Dame fan and check out their interview with Reggie Brooks. Really good interview, some good stories, and the old Irish perspective, which is never bad to have.
Yeah, man, I love Reggie Brooks. He's not only a tremendous football player in college and the NFL, but he's a great guy, and just talks about how the game. In that interview, if you guys go back, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it, because he really breaks down how much the game has changed, and how, when he was there, they moved him to defensive back because they had 6 guys that were NFL running backs ahead of him. And he could have transferred, he could have left, he could have hit the portal, even though the portal didn't exist back then. But he could have gone somewhere else and sat a year and then got to play. But he sat and waited his turn. And, the rest is history. He had one of the greatest seasons of any running back in the Notre Dame history, 2 of the biggest touchdowns in the history of Notre Dame football, against Michigan and against Penn State in the Snow Bowl. And then he's worked for Notre Dame for almost 25 years since then. So he's made himself a home there by committing himself to the university and sticking it out.
All right, and that's 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. Everybody enjoy your weekends. Enjoy the football. Tomorrow we got, in the Ivy League, we got Princeton and Yale, 2 of the teams tied at the top with Dartmouth, fighting it out as we come down to the end of the Ivy League season. I'll be looking into that tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Very exciting game for the Ivy League. As we'll see if this kid, Nolan Grooms, since Yale has installed him as their quarterback, they're 3-0. The kid was their running option early in the year, but against UConn, he didn't play very well against UConn in the second half, but Tony Reno, the coach of Yale, saw something in him, and he's averaging almost 300 yards a game passing and almost 80 yards rushing, and has thrown, I think, 8 touchdowns against 1 interception in the last 3 wins, including an impressive win over Columbia, who was playing very well at the time. So we will see what he does this week against Princeton. Princeton was the early season favorite in the Ivy League, and see if they can continue it going, because we're coming up to the game, Harvard, next week.
Love it.
All right, people. Have a good night. Cue the band.